All right, what's going on, everybody? My name is Stephen Miller. This is Richard Carthon. We're here for Cryptocurrent with another edition of Cryptocurrent Live, where we bring you our crypto commentary, a little bit of the news on the week, and dive into the things that we think that everybody needs to know a little bit more about so that we can all be a little bit more cryptocurrent. So, Richard, how are you this week?
Doing well. Excited to be back for another Crypto Decrypted. We are decrypting something that I think is very important to me and everyone as we are all in the crypto space, which is mass adoption. So excited to talk more about that. The markets on Tuesdays have just been for the last month have been pretty brutal. It's like we have this conversation Tuesday, everything kind of goes in a positive light, and then come Sunday, Monday, we start seeing things start to go back down to where we were a week ago. So, I'm hopeful this will be a week that kind of starts moving in another direction. Don't know how realistic that is. I think we might do some retesting, but trying to stay optimistic. How about you, Steve?
Well, I got to tell you, man, I think that Rectember is off to a great close. It's living up to the hype for sure. But I've got hope for October because to me, I think that right now we're finishing up this accumulation phase and we're about to jump into something a lot more fun, and that's a big uptrend. But for those of you that are first time joining us, thanks for dropping in. We appreciate you being here. Please do us a solid, hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you come back and see us every week. We have great new content here on Mondays and Thursdays with Richard, who hosts our interview show, and then also here on Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern, where we host Cryptocurrent Live. We have a lot of great stuff on deck today. Buy, Seller, Hodl, our news segment. We're going to again get into Crypto Decrypted, and then we've got blockchain bets to wrap it all up. So, to start us off today, let's get into our first segment here for Buy, Seller, Hodl. Richard, why don't you take us through what's been going on with food and retail services in crypto?
All right. So for my buy sell hodl news, the first one that comes up, the one that I don't like to talk about a lot, but you can't ignore it anymore, Dogecoin. So you might be able to pay for your Taco Bell with Dogecoin. So a couple of things of why this is awesome, in a lot of ways. If you want to get to millennials and Gen Zers, what better way than Taco Bell? Taco Bell is jumping on that train and allowing you a way to soon be able to pay for your meal in some Dogecoin. What's also amazing is Whole Foods is going to start allowing for Bitcoin transactions as well. So, in a lot of ways, you're starting to see more and more of uh, these companies taking on cryptocurrency as payments, which I think is a longer term play for them because they can start putting these cryptos on their ledger, which in a lot of ways could help increase their overall revenue over time. Could also make it go down depending on timing of the market. But if it's a long term strategy, which I think a lot of corporations are looking at it as a way to bring in and be able to take some of these Dogecoins, Bitcoins, be able to hold them, and then whenever it gets to a more desirable price, they'd be able to sell it for a profit and be in a good place. So everyone wins. Now you can kind of start putting your Dogecoin to use. Again, what is amazing about the concept of money when you think about it at its core is an exchange of value. What makes a dollar bill valuable is the fact that our country recognizes and someone says this is valuable. Even though Dogecoin was made as a joke, as a meme coin, now it's being seen as valuable because it's being seen as a store of value. I mean, even you can go to like the Dallas Mavericks games and they take Doge as a form of payment. So, it's pretty incredible that more places are beginning to accept cryptocurrency as payments for food and other items. Again, going into our bigger discussion around mass adoption, why this is good for that conversation.
I think it's a really exciting time to be in this space, and you can't deny that anymore. Like, not just like the fact that yes, you can pay using Dogecoin in certain specific spots, but the fact that you were starting to see it creep into parts of our everyday life. I mean, that's got to be reassuring if you're just interested in the space. If you're embedded in it, like you and I are, it's a lot easier to get really amped up about this type of stuff because this is the first step into what we're talking about today with mass adoption. So, realistically speaking, where do you think that we're going from here? Do you think that we're going to see more retailers and food retailers and fast food chains like follow suit with this, or is this going to be a flash in the pan at least within this current market cycle?
I think it's going to be the case study. So if Taco Bell would be the first fast food restaurant chain to accept crypto, especially something like Dogecoin, if it has success, I would see all of the rest of these major players begin to follow suit. And it has everything to do with how we perform. I think they're basically just saying like, "Hey, Q4, we want to see if this was a great choice. If it wasn't, so be it. We'll stop come 2022. But right now, I mean, even looking at the price of Doge with it going below, I believe, 20 cents right now. If it can even get back to close to all time highs, there's opportunity that the money that they make from taking Dogecoin, they'd be able to potentially double or triple their profits if it goes back to all time highs at the end of the year, which potentially could happen. So, again, I think this will be an interesting case study. If they do well, I think we see all types of companies begin to follow suit.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be really cool to see how it goes. But to me, I think there's one other big piece of news lately. And before we get into it, I'd like to ask you, at least from your perspective, are you buying on this news? Like, would you, if you saw this news, would you be going out and buying more Bitcoin or Dogecoin? Would you be selling this news, or would you hodl on this news to see how it develops?
So for me, I am buying on this news simply because, again, this is a first break into fast food. And if this works, slash when I think it potentially could work, we could see the floodgates open with this. More and more values being proven for Dogecoin. More companies are being accepted and proving it's useful. Therefore, as much as it pains me to say this, I'm buying this news. How about you?
To me, I think that this is somewhere between a hodl and a buy. Um, Again, this was something that came very much so out of the woodwork. Like, it was not something that was well publicized, at least on the front, because again, right now the market's trending down. When the market's trending down, people are not paying attention to positive news. Most of the time, like we always say on this show, is that you buy the rumor and you sell the news. That is, except for when the news does not leak and we see it come out in real time, like with this. So to me, I see it as in between the two. You can kind of take it either way. But I want to shift gears here for 1 second and move into our next piece of news this week by asking you this. Do you believe that with what we're going through right now, it can be considered a form of like psychological warfare? Because from what I see, we have all these institutions that are trying to manipulate the market down so they can get a better buy-in. Do you think that buyers need to be aware of the current state of psychological warfare in crypto?
Yes, it right now is a, if again, if you're a trader right now, it's your dream because it's volatile, it's going up, it's going down, and it's staying within levels of resistance and level of support, which right now has been between like a 45,000 to 40,000 Bitcoin and other coins, etc. Um, I think once we finally get that next leg up, whether it's going to break through support or if it's going to break through resistance, that's when I think it's going to get really exciting. So for me, I'm hodling at this moment and waiting to see where our floor is right now, truly.
Okay. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and give you my little piece of proof that right now we're seeing some of the most intense psychological warfare ever. Most of the time, when you go through these cycles and you see people getting really animated on the news and you see people getting really upset on Twitter about manipulation, it's mostly because of bigger players. What they're doing is they're trying to put out FUD so that you can basically shake out the weak hands, have people sell when ultimately they should be holding. This is one of those situations. Morgan Stanley is one of the biggest investment houses in our country. And over the past week slash month, they have actually, it was over the last quarter still, but they added 58,000 GBTC shares to their treasury holdings. So their firm invested in Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, which is effectively them buying into Bitcoin. Them stacking this type of insane stockpile of Bitcoin up is totally counterintuitive to what they're showing you in the markets right now. All of the news is pointing to you and saying, hey, you need to get out because it's not safe. You need to get out because we're going back into the 30s. When in reality, all these big firms are buying at 45. They're buying at 46. They're buying at 50. They want you to leave so they can continue to dollar cost average down so that ultimately when the price starts shooting back up, you get FOMO and you're forced in back to buying in at a higher point when you were closer to peak. It's a really unfair way of doing things, but I think that it's really important to stay up to date on this type of news. The other really big piece that I did want to shift over to that I think is just as important is news out of Cardano this past weekend. This past weekend, we had Cardano Summit from the 25th to the 26th. And there were three really, really big partnerships that I want to make sure are on your radar because if you look at the news, Cardano is getting fudded all over the place. People do not want to see Cardano succeed, and the price is being suppressed. This is a perfect case in point. Over the weekend at Cardano Summit, IOHK, which is Input Output Hong Kong, or IOG, Input Output Global, released information that they have partnered with Dish Network, Chainlink, and Veritree, all three of which are massive, massive deals. I believe that Dish is a Fortune 200 company. Chainlink is one of the top 15 cryptos and forever will be, in my opinion, because they're the top oracle out there. And Veritree is a massive sustainability play. So when you see positive news like this, especially because this didn't leak, I think the Dish news leaked. But when you see something this big come out and it's not actually affecting price, it's a sign of suppression. It's a sign of more of these Morgan Stanleys, the Goldman Sachses, the JP Morgans. They're intentionally suppressing the price so they can get a better buy-in because news like this is the type of stuff that when it comes out with the right type of timing, it should push the market up. So right now, I would tell you that based on what we've seen in the last 2 days, all this sentiment together is a buy signal to me. It's a massive buy signal. We are right now ending an accumulation phase that I think is going to end right when we see about 46,000 or actually, no, it was 47.5 get breached. If we can break above $47,500 per Bitcoin price, accumulation's done. It's out the door. You're done. Anything below that right now, I'm accumulating because I think that this is what we're going to see happen in the fourth quarter. We're going to see a massive run. Richard, what is your sentiment on all of this? Do you think that we're going to be heading a lot higher in the fourth quarter, or is this something that you don't necessarily buy into, and you think that a lot of this price action is just baked in?
So I gotta first message you and say that, of course, that you're bullish on Cardano, but all the same, that news is being like Cardano is not giving are being given the credit it should be right now with its successful launch of its smart contracts and all of the partnerships that it has in play. Like the price suppression honestly doesn't make sense, kind of like you're saying, other than I think there's players in that are looking to dollar cost average get a good price in before the fourth quarter run. I also believe that we are in for a pretty big run coming in the next month or two. I think Q4 could be exceptional, um, especially with a lot of what's going on in the market right now. I think a lot of things are pointing to a potential pullback before we see our final leg up in this current bull cycle, unless it turns into a super cycle. Whole nother discussion for a whole nother day. But I think what we're seeing right now is a potential final pullback before we see that final true run up that a lot of people are anticipating this year. So I would, I would agree with the sentiment that you kind of painted.
Awesome. Well, look, let's go ahead and carry this thing forward. The one thing that I will say is I do come off as a bit of a Cardano maximalist sometimes, and I want to go ahead and make sure I do put one thing out there. I am not for maximalism. I think it's the most toxic thing in our space, and we should talk about that at a later date. Definitely a conversation for a different crypto decrypted. But I do want to give a criticism of Cardano right now. They did make a massive mistake this past weekend at Cardano Summit, and I want everybody to know it because, frankly, I do come off as a Cardano maximalist sometimes, and the truth is that I want to own both sides of the coin. They made a huge mistake this weekend in not putting enough focus on the projects that are building on their ecosystem. Cardano Summit was a massive, massive event. It was in multiple countries, like with actual in person events. They did virtual summits where they had VR experiences. And yet we're focusing on these new partnerships with Chainlink and Veritree and Dish when they could have just as easily had even like more little breakout moments to highlight things like Charlie 3, like Giro Wallet, like even Card Starter. The massive, you know, Cardano ecosystem supports that have been out there for the last 6 months. They did very little to actually support those players within their ecosystem. I think that's not constructive. So that's me owning my bias for a second here. But let's go ahead and move into crypto decrypted. So again, guys, if you found all of that news valuable, please do us a favor. Make sure you press that like button. But we are headed into crypto decrypted now, which is our news segment every week where we bring you a new topic and break it down to brass tacks so that you can understand crypto at a little bit easier of a level. We always want to make sure that while we're providing a lot of expert knowledge here, that every single person that comes and visits this show and gets to know Richard and I understand that we want beginners to start getting educated on a much bigger level so that they can ultimately move forward in the space and be able to be smarter in it. So this week, Richard, we are talking about mass adoption. Mass adoption is a massive, massive topic in this space. It's something we've talked about for the last 4 years, and we continue to speculate on when it's going to be here. When we say mass adoption, of course, we're talking about the idea of at what point are we going to see the majority of the world utilizing blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies. Today, we're going to break down for you a little bit about where we are in that timeline. We're going to also get into essentially how are we going to get there? What does it need? What's it going to take after we see the past of how we got to where we are now? And we're also going to talk a little bit about once it is here, what does that look like? So, Richard, why don't you take us into the innovation curve for a sec? Because I think that that's it. Looking at the past is always something that we need to be owning when it comes to innovation in this space.
Absolutely. So first, we're going to look at how the innovation curve pretty much works. So as we look at this, and it's the innovation adoption life cycle. The first 2.5% of the world or majority of people that come into this space are called the innovators. They're the first movers. A lot of different people that come in. Then after that, we then creep into the early adopters, which is about 13.5%. Then we have early majority, late majority. Early majority has about 34%. Late majority has 34%. Laggards have 16%. Now, for everyone watching this right now, you'll be able to see on this 2.5 to 13.5%, the innovators to early adopters. Right now, I think we're on the cusp of innovators to early adopters. Now, why do I say that? Now, look at an article real quick with one study suggesting that roughly 25 million of cryptocurrency traders outside the US and Europe, that there's basically 100 million owners of Bitcoin. And then if you take that, that basically means that it's roughly 1.5 percent. Now, if you add all the other cryptos out there, I'm going to say it's probably going to be somewhere between 2 and 2.5%. So then that aligns with this curve I was just talking about with innovators and early adopters. So from a worldwide perspective, most of the world doesn't own cryptocurrency at all, right? So that's one way to look at that. But the other thing that I want to point out is that it took a decade to get from this 2.5 to this early adopters. So again, Bitcoin, just to do a quick timeline of the history, the white paper was made in 2008, and then the first block was mint in 2009. So of course we're in 2021 right now. The first real payment, Pizza Day, back in 2010, made 22, 2010, 10,000 BTC. Again, 10,000 BTC was spent on $25 worth of pizza. Obviously, the guy who did that today is probably kicking himself, but at the time got value out of spending money to get the Bitcoin. Now, flash forward to a decade later, well, actually, I'm gonna skip ahead to 2013. The market cap reached $1 billion. So it took 4 years for Bitcoin to get to $1 billion market cap. It then also took another 3 years when in 2017 when it hard forked into Bitcoin Cash, and then the next year in 2018, the beta release of Lightning Network came out, which allowed for a lot of faster transactions. Now that's again over the course of 10 years from the white paper to Lightning Network. You fast forward even now to 2021. The amount of technological advances that Bitcoin has seen and just the greater crypto space has seen is outrageously significant. A couple things I want to point out. One, when you think about it took 4 years from the first Genesis block from Satoshi, the Genesis of the block being mined to the um, $1 billion valuation. There are ICOs that are coming out and raising that much money in a short amount of time, a ungodly amount of time. It's not taking 4 years to get to $1 billion. It's taking months for some years, but some months. And then you look at the ecosystems that are now being built on top of that. You think about a thing like Ethereum, from you looking at base layer protocol. There's only a handful of transactions that go on Bitcoin's um, layer one protocol. Then Ethereum, you have a couple more transactions that happen as base layer. Then they made layer two to help speed up transaction. You have something like Solana that has 50,000 transactions a second, more than any actual bank out there right now. That took time to develop. It took innovators, the first to come in and build a lot of great technology, but don't necessarily make it at the end, but they had to go and create these things. These things take time. Now, sorry, this was a long back end way of describing how do we get to mass adoption. The first thing that I want to put in place is that in innovation and being an innovator, it takes time to build things. It takes time to build something so simple that you can understand it. To build an iPhone, that took of development years of development, and it's so easy anybody can use it. That is what crypto is trying to get to where at any point you can pull up your phone and be using crypto without even understanding that you're using crypto and blockchain. And that's what we have to get to, and that's where we're headed. And now, Steve, I'm going to kind of punt it to you because I think you have a path of like, how do we start heading that way?
Yeah, so there's one thing I wanted to add first, and it's more of a distinguishment point for our audience because again, we're asking you to zoom out, right? When we're asking somebody to zoom out, it's not always an easy thing to do. So I want to make sure that you see this because it's not what we're talking about. When we talk about the markets, most of the time we're talking about the short-term current bull cycle. And that's just true of how this channel operates. It's how we, organize a lot of our thoughts. So when we're talking about the way a market cycle is adopting, we typically get to this point in the chart here where it starts to turn green. When that's starting to turn green, that is where peak retail adoption is taking place. And this really speaks to market psychology. That bell curve that Richard showed you is not reflected in this chart. It's really important that you understand that because, again, what we're talking about here is what is the path to mass adoption, not in this current bull cycle, but on the whole, as we're talking about all of cryptocurrency in the future, past, present, all of it. What's it going to take for us to get to the point where we're at mass adoption? So let me take this down and we can go ahead and carry this thing forward. Richard, the thing that I wanted to get to next in this dialogue is how are we going to get there? And I have a specific perspective on it. I'd be really interested to hear your take. But the easiest way for me to make sense of this to somebody is mass adoption looks like every single person interfacing with blockchain when they don't even know that they are. What does that mean? If you're a tech guy, you get really amped up about, Apple and Tesla and the technologies that they release on an annual basis. With cryptocurrencies, if you're a nerd like me and you get really excited about these little projects that come out in the ICO. On the whole, society adopts these things like an iPhone or a Tesla and they don't get talked about often. When that gets to that point with crypto, that's how you know we've reached mass adoption. We need to make it so that our technology is so embedded in people's lives that it's just there. It's part of their daily lives. It's part of the creature comfort that they are now appreciating. So, all of that is to say, you need to simplify beyond, right? Right now, MetaMask and all the crypto wallets, in certain ways, they're not the easiest to interface with.
Nope.
DeFi is extremely difficult to interface with. And frankly, it scares people. The one place that I will tell you, I think a lot more people are coming into and they're feeling a lot more comfort in it is the NFT space, ironically. So, from your perspective, understanding that simplification is the first step and getting people to this idea of crypto as an embedded lifestyle or like an embedded feature that you just eventually take for granted, to be frank, what do you think is going to take it to the next level? How are we going to get there?
It's going to be these platforms that turn all the steps to getting ultimately what you want into one platform. So, for example, you brought up NFTs, and that was an example I was going to use for a lot of brand new people. Like, let's say grandma wanted to go buy an NFT for her son. There's no way grandma, unless she has a lot of time and a lot of patience, is going to be able to learn how to first be able to purchase crypto, aka Ethereum, then be able to transfer it into a wallet address, then be able to set up a thing like OpenSea, then understand how to use the interface to be able to buy it, and then once they own it, be able to transfer it and do all those steps. Like, it takes a little bit of intuitiveness and wanting to learn to be able to do those steps. But at the same time, if there was an app that you download called NFT, and on NFT you go there and you put I set up my wallet, or my current bank account, and let's say that I want to buy this NFT that is telling me cost 1 ETH. And so when I go to purchase it, it's going to auto convert my money into that ETH, purchase it, and then it's also, once it's purchased, going to be on a wallet that is also within the platform. And now I own it. And then when I go to send it, all I have to do is press send, get the right wallet address, and now it is sent to the right place. And now anybody can use it. Now, I don't think we're necessarily super far from that, but to have something that simple takes a ton of steps on the back end of that ecosystem, figuring out how to make each of those components cohesive, secure, and easy. And like that takes years of innovation to be able to do something like that. And again, we're working, the greater crypto sphere is working to get there, but we're years away from being on a platform that literally will do that start to finish, and anybody can pick it up and understand how to do something as complex as getting an NFT is something as simple as that kind of interface.
And look, I think that the one other piece of this the cryptocurrent crew needs to hear is that there's a lot of these big words and different buzzwords that from the technological side, we need to see hit before we're truly achieving mass adoption. But from what Richard and I have already brought to you, I think the big thing is really taking form around three words. You have intuitive, simplified, and the third is frictionless. That third one is just absolutely imperative for you to understand, and it kind of echoes a point that you've already heard a little bit, but I want to just absolutely nail it on the head. When you are doing something, whether it's on the internet, in person, a task, if you will, those tasks can either be tedious or they can just be something that you do in your sleep. A frictionless task is one that you do without really even thinking about it, and it's just that easy. When I look at mass adoption, especially with where we're headed right now, I see it as I can pay with Bitcoin at any vendor. I can go into a store, buy it, piece of merchandise, and also automatically receive into my wallet on that transaction an NFT that is a proof of certificate. These little things that will eventually start popping up into your life will be the next phase of mass adoption. Now, if I'm being realistic, I think massive, like true mass adoption at its base layer is probably another 2 market cycles off. Richard, do you agree with that, or do you think that we are closer to mass adoption than we give it credit for today?
It's going to take that much time. I mean, I think the first decade of innovation was all about how do you build a foundation of blockchain and the different systems that are out there. I mean, again, NFTs are relatively new, DeFi is relatively new. The idea of a decentralized autonomous organization, brand new. A lot of things that have come to fruition. You need the time to be able to build those out to where they can scale and again be intuitive, be scalable, be frictionless. And what I think next two bull cycles basically is when we say bull cycles, we typically go by Bitcoin happening events. That's usually a good indicator of when these are going to be. So by Steven's indication, that's saying basically 2028. I think we're going to be somewhere in between there. I think we start to truly see it. My 2 cents, our two Satoshis, is that we start getting closer around late 2026, around 2027. I think right before that next bull cycle is when we really start seeing mass adoption happen because so much can happen in a matter of, we're in 2021 right now, in a matter of 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that we're going to continue to see a rapid growth phase, but the other piece of this is really interesting because when we're talking about the when of it all, as in like truly when mass adoption, I kind of am reminded of the fact that we've been building, we've been building, we've been building. But as the saying goes, Rome was not built in a day.
Yep.
Nor will crypto be built in a day because frankly in the building of Rome there were many moments where that entire system was burned to the ground. There were wars fought. All of that's coming for crypto. We've spent the last 10 years building and creating and adding to our society. Regulators are going to come in and they're going to burn it to the ground in some ways. So you have to be willing to acknowledge that and own that because it's coming no matter whether or not you want them to or not, they're coming.
Yeah.
So when that comes, certain things are going to be built like absolutely destroyed, burnt to the ground, and they're going to have to find new ways to bring it back. The other side of that is you're also going to have new projects come along that are going to absolutely outpace the rest of the market. And therefore, it's going to make parts of the market obsolete. I say that because I want to bring up to you the thing that I think needs to happen between now and mass adoption. And I think it's going to be an absolute key in the next market cycle, which we'll probably see in 2023, 2024 is when we're supposed to see the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the wave of interoperability. I
Yes.
think the sooner that we hit these types of, as Charles Hoskinson said like a couple of weeks ago, these Wi-Fi moments where everything is naturally connected and we don't think about it. It's not like, oh, I'm using the Ethereum blockchain. Oh, I'm using the Solana blockchain. Oh, I'm using the Cardano blockchain. The sooner that we get to that point where it's like, oh, I'm just using a blockchain, that is another step in the right direction. So all of this to say, once we get to this perfect idyllic world, Richard, just to wrap this up, what does it look like when mass adoption is here? What do you envision the market cap to be? What are the top, just for shits and gigs, what are the top 3 coins when we actually hit mass adoption?
So there's one more picture I want to paint in everyone's head just as a final like emphasis in here to show like where this is going and growing. Think about Atari in game, like just how far gaming has come. When Pong came out, literally it was just things, these little bite-sized digits going up and down, doing all that kind of stuff. And the progression from that to um literally going to your first PlayStation and Xbox to where we are now with like the Xbox whatever and PlayStation 5, the graphics are just like insane, right? But it took years, it took decades to get to the point of where that was that excellent. Right now, I wouldn't say that we're at Atari. I'd say that we're probably at Mario. I'd say that, we're at Nintendo. A lot of stuff's starting to come up. We're not even necessarily at 3D yet. We're kind of at some 2D. We're so early. And so if I am going to look at in the future when we get closer to mass adoption, which again, in my opinion, I think we can see that in the next, hopefully, 6, 7 years. What does that look like to me? The top three are going to be Bitcoin's still going to be up there. I think Ethereum's going to overtake it. And I think someone's going to come out of the woodworks and from a market capitalization, take it over. Solana right now could potentially do it. Otherwise, it's going to be one of these other ecosystem-esque type deals. I think that Cosmos could throw his hat in the ring. I think that potentially Tezos could throw its hat in the ring. But my top three at this moment, had to think about it: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana. Those are my three, and I think the market cap I think in the next decade we're looking at a market capitalization of anywhere from 7 to 12 trillion dollars. So I'm gonna say we're gonna be around 4 to 6. I'm gonna put 4.5 trillion.
Okay, I'm gonna work it backward then because I think that mass adoption will be here when we overtake the total global value of gold markets. Currently, the gold market's like overall value is around 11.1 trill. I can see mass adoption happening somewhere between 10 and 12. That's just my take. Yes, I do think that's coming in 2028, 2027, somewhere in there. But do I think that that means that, we're going to see a similar top three to what we see right now? I don't. I think that what you're going to see happen very, very quickly is Web3 in all of its glory is going to get an absolute shot to the groin. The second that the regulators come in here and they start saying, "Oh yeah, no, we need to regulate the crap out of DeFi," which they're already planning, you're going to see Web3 applications and the big like layer one support layer players like your Solanas, Ethereum's, Cardanos. They're all going to actually end up losing market cap because DeFi is going to get knocked on its butt. Now, I do think that we could see more layer two solutions come up into the top 10, but I could ultimately see something like Bitcoin at number 3, Ethereum at number 2 or 1. But I think that above all else, and this is probably my one bold call for the decade, if you will. I think that we're going to see Chainlink in the top 3. There's so many of these applications that do not function without an oracle. They just don't. They need to pull data in. It's the only way that a smart contract actually executes. Right now, I think Chainlink is one of the most undervalued assets in all of crypto, and it's getting flattened away, disrespected in terms of its actual market cap. If people understood how smart contracts worked, they would be piling into Chainlink. And I will raise my hand and say, maybe I'm a little biased, but after doing a huge bit of research of my own, I doubled up my Chainlink holding in the last week. So as I look at the future, I think that oracles like Chainlink have a place in the top 3, especially given the fact that I think that we're going to see DeFi get really pushed back here in the next 5 years. So somewhere between a 9 to 12 trillion dollar market cap is what we'll see when mass adoption's here. And ultimately, we could see Bitcoin, Ethereum, other Web3 players, and even something like Chainlink in the top 3 based on what Richard and I have already spelled out for you. But look, if you have your own take on this, if you enjoyed this segment of Crypto Decrypted and you want to give us what you think is going to happen in the markets when it comes to mass adoption, how we can get there, what it's going to look like, leave us a note down in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. We want to make sure that we're building this show out to be even more dynamic and fun for everybody involved. So please, again, reach out to us. You can always reach us at our handles above, at _cryptocurrent_ on Twitter and at cryptocurrent_ on Instagram. But you can also get in touch with us by joining our private Telegram channel. So you can reach out to Richard or I to join that, where we basically continue these conversations on a weekly basis with our audience on Telegram. But you can also stay in tune by joining our newsletter over on crypto-current.co, where you'll get the latest news as well as some quick insights from our team. So, Richard, we have one last segment this week that we need to get through, and it's always a crowd favorite around here. So, why don't we jump into a little blockchain bets?
Let's get it.
All right. So, for those that, again, are new here, our blockchain bets segment is where we basically break down 2 picks per basically market tier. So, we're going to have a large cap round where we talk about the top 25 coins, which coin we think is going to perform best over the next week. Then we hit a mid cap round, which is coins 25 through 100. And then finally, we end with a micro cap round, all the coins after 100. So Richard, we let you go most of the time in the first position, but I'm going to take it this week and I'm going to give you my call, which is Uniswap. So, as my large cap player this week, Uniswap is one of the most interesting projects out there when you consider the fact that it is being threatened by the SEC and it's not backing down. Um, it is the biggest primary exchange in all of crypto right now for you to be able to go and exchange assets in a decentralized fashion. And I personally think that Uniswap is massively undervalued right now. When you consider the fact that all these DeFi applications may end up targeted in the next 2 months, Uniswap is going to be one of the ones that is targeted. But I think over the next week, as people realize, oh man, I got to be moving money around in preparation for having liquidity for the next run up, they're going to be flocking to Uniswap. So that's why I'm going with Uniswap in my first pick. Richard, what
All
is
right.
your large cap pick this week?
First of all, great pick. I think that's a very solid one, especially where current market conditions are. I'm going to go with Polygon Matic. So it has been taking a little bit of a beating of late, but it's still doing a really good job building out a really good infrastructure. So again, for those who don't really know, it's Ethereum's Internet of Blockchains. It's a protocol to connect Ethereum compatible blockchain networks. So it's helping Ethereum scale. Again, talked about earlier, Ethereum. One of the biggest challenges with Ethereum right now, and with gas, if you've had to buy anything, having to spend an absorbent amount of money to pay for a thing or to make something happen in the Ethereum ecosystem. Polygon's helping to do that, and they are continuing to innovate. And they even have a bug bounty, which is live. So if you're a developer, if you can discover a bug and vulnerability in Polygon, they'll give you $2 million right now. So between everything that they have going on, building out, and just looking at technical analysis of what is going on in the market, I think whenever this market does recover, Polygon is going to be one of the ones that shoots up, and I think that Polygon is due for a big leg up. So that's going to be my pick.
It's a really good pick. I mean, I've started to come more onto the Polygon train in recent months, but that's only after I got a lot more in tune and like actually doing more research on what their roadmap looks like. Again, everybody, I want to reinforce something to you real quick. These are our picks because, again, we are crypto commentators. We are not financial analysts. None of
Correct.
this is financial advice. This is just if we're going on our own money right now, what we would put our money into in the next week. These are our picks for it. So, moving into the mid cap round, I'm going to continue to follow the same exact trend that I brought you on Uniswap, and that is by moving to the Cosmos ecosystem to Osmosis, which is the Cosmos ecosystems exchange. So essentially, in the Cosmos ecosystem, which is basically Ethereum but interoperable, they are building out a transfer protocol called Osmosis, where you can start to exchange things cross decks, but also basically create one hub where you can exchange assets in that ecosystem. So because I still stand by my theory with Uniswap that I think that a lot of people are going to try and move liquidity out of certain places and then position themselves to then move into others on the next leg up. I think Cosmos and that whole world are absolutely posed for like a massive breakout, and Osmosis will go with it if that is the case. So, Richard, you've gotten your next pick in the mid cap. What do you have?
So my and first again another solid pick. I'm going to go with EOS. EOS. It's another platform. You can see a theme of what I'm going for today, which is platforms. When markets go down, I think some of the largest this is personal opinion. I think some of the biggest opportunities are in platforms and ecosystems that are being created. EOS has been around for a while. They are all about state of blockchain privacy, and what they want to do is continue to create the safe, compliant, and predictable digital infrastructures. And so, a lot of projects are continuing to be built on top of EOS and trying to be in competition with the likes of like a Cosmos, a Dot, an Ethereum, etc. And the speed and security are two of the biggest things that they have going for them. Again, going back to fundamentals, another one that's being pummeled a lot, and I think is another one that could be accumulated during this down run. I think EOS has a huge, huge opportunities to still have a massive return by the end of the year. So in this next week, I think it could be a good play, and I'm going with EOS.
So again, I think that you're starting to see these trends here, folks. You're getting that, Richard has his eye on the platforms, I have my eye on the exchanges. But for my micro cap play, I'm taking an absolute abrupt left turn. And I'm going to bring it up on screen. I'm going to hopefully be able to show you exactly why I am doing what I'm doing with this pick. My pick this week for my micro cap is going to be Super Farm. Super Farm, for those that don't know, is an NFT ecosystem play that is led by one of the biggest, YouTube forces out there in Elio Trades, a YouTuber by the name of Elliot Weinman off air. He runs this project called Super Farm, and it is a massive NFT gaming and NFT launchpad conglomerate at this stage of the game. But if you look at the chart, you're looking at the 180 day right now. Let's go back out to max. It had a massive pump in the first month and a half of being on the market. And that was back in March of this year. Since then, it got clobbered. And it was starting to, make its little return here as we, pop back up in late August, early September, made its way back up to $1 from about 30-cent floor. 30 cents was actually where that ICO started. And I got to tell you, based on everything I know about Elliot Wyman and the way that he builds teams, I have a lot of faith in Superfarm, whether it's this week or the rest of this cycle. But because I see us on a downtrend right now, and because I think that by the end of this next leg down, we could see it return to somewhere between 35 and 45 cents per coin or per token, I see this as a massive opportunity because it will end up retesting that high at some point, at least in the next 3 months, per my opinion. That would be a recovery from being down already about 88% in this current cycle. So, if you consider where gaming is headed, I think that's why Super is a great play. Richard, what do you have for your microcap this week?
On the subject of gaming, another word that we like to say a lot on here, NFTs. There's another project that recently just came out called DeFi 11. They're really interesting in the space where they're both on Polygon and Ethereum, and what they're trying to do is reimagine the blockchain gaming experience. And the way that they're doing that is going to allow like fantasy sports betting, NFT gaming, and a bunch of others. And it's going to be again they're early in their process, but what they're trying to bring is pretty unique, and they have a pretty solid team behind them to help make that a reality. So so far it's off to a pretty solid start. I think it has an opportunity to continue to have another great week in front of it, and so I'm going to go with DeFi 11.
Awesome. So, Richard, if you could go ahead and recap for us, what were our calls this week?
So as a recap, Steven went with Uniswap for the large cap. Steven went with Uniswap. I went with Polygon Matic. For the mid cap, Steve went with Osmosis. I went with EOS. And for the micro cap, Steven went with Superfarm, and I went with DeFi 11.
Awesome. So, guys, that wraps up blockchain bets for us this week. We again appreciate you being here. Let us know if you had a specific favorite call in the comments below. Before we wrap things up this week, I want to remind everybody we've got a couple really exciting things going on in the crypto ecosystem um, over the course of the next few days as we look towards Friday with our normal Friday scheduled programming. So, first and foremost, if you have not checked out Richard's interviews that he does here on Crypto Current on Mondays and Thursdays, we just dropped an episode with Idan Yago from Sovereign talking about Bitcoin lending. And then on Thursday, we also have another interview coming up with the lead over at Rubik's. Both are going to be really great interviews. Richard, can you tease any of it right now?
Um, so there are quite a few things that came up in the last week that I think is going to be pretty tremendous. And one of them being that as I spoke with one of the speakers that are coming on the show in the future, one of the things that keeps being brought up is the concept around NFTs and being able to go into some of these in-person events. And one that's coming up near us in Texas, Steven actually put on my horizon. I was like, hey man, like that might be something worth going and checking out. And I think he actually might be able to attend. So do you want to kind of talk about that a little bit?
Are you referring to the show out in Marfa?
Yes.
So one of the biggest NFT projects out there, and when it comes to just strictly NFT art, is Art Blocks. So Art Blocks has a whole bunch of generative art projects that they bring onto their platform, and they open up to the general public. And as time goes on, and as they have gone on, I think they're now into their fifth series starting next week. But in line with that fifth series launch, they're also going to be opening their very first ever in-person studio, which they're calling the Art Blocks House, and that's taking place in Marfa, Texas, on the 8th. Wait a second. Yeah, the 8th, 9th, and 10th of October. So pretty big event there. We're going to be bringing you exclusive editorial coverage on that, as well as bringing you some additional interviews with their artists in the time just following that. Other really big events going on in the crypto space this upcoming week. We have a couple of really big launches that are scheduled for September 30th. Cody is launching their smart contracts platform. Thorchain is upgrading their mainnet. And as I brought up on Friday, what may end up being the biggest individual upgrade, like only excluding Alonzo within the Cardano ecosystem because I'm totally biased, is the Columbus 5 upgrade within Terra. Again, go back and listen to our Friday episode, play it back. We talked about it a little bit at the end, but Columbus 5 is going to be an absolute game changer within the Terra ecosystem. So keep your eyes on the horizon for that. It's also a really good reason to be looking into some of these coins if the market does dip, would make them really solid buys. But also, I'm reminded that our producer Chris is also going to be launching his own short form educational content series that will be dropping on Wednesdays going forward. So if you want to learn a little bit about smart contracts, he will have a special short form episode for you tomorrow here on Cryptocurrent. So come on up to our YouTube channel, give that a look. It's going to be a great, great episode. But that's going to do it for us this week. Richard, any final words or announcements that I'm missing?
I think we covered them all. Final things just to remember to stay cryptocurrent. Appreciate everybody.
Later, guys. Have a great week.